What's up, everyone? My name's Dustin, and welcome to the Lore of the Ring. I appreciate you all joining me on this journey. A little backstory about me for those who don't know. I've been a wrestling fan my whole life, going on 35 years now. I grew up watching wrestling with my dad, watching wrestling with my grandfather on my mom's side, my uncles. We would always get together on Sundays and order the pay-per-views. Did grow up in a WCW household, but that's not to say I didn't appreciate WWF and then ECW. I'm a huge ECW fan. My favorite promotions of all time would have to be WCW, ECW, and Ring of Honor. But I love WWF, WWE, love Impact and what they've done throughout the years. Love AEW now, big New Japan fan. So I'm well versed in a lot of the brands and companies that you're probably familiar with. This first episode, I'm going to be covering a show that is a very controversial show for some reasons, and we'll get to that. But we're going to be talking about WrestleMania 22. I put up a Twitter poll, gosh, I guess it's been almost a year now, asking what I should cover in my first show, WrestleMania 22 1. And I'm not mad about it. This has got a lot of good stuff, a lot to unpack. This era of WrestleManias in particular, very special to me. My dad worked out of state. I didn't live with my dad in high school. Him and my mom got divorced. My dad worked out of state, and whenever he would come in, we would obviously watch wrestling, or we'd talk about it on the phone throughout the weeks and stuff. But when he would be in, we would watch wrestling together and catch up. Well, this era, I would always buy my dad the WrestleMania DVD. So we're talking probably WrestleMania 20 through, 25, 26. That was a pretty strong run that we had of buying the WrestleMania DVDs when it came out, watching them together and enjoying that. So WrestleMania 22 was certainly one of those. Let's get into it, though. Let's not waste any time. Now, something worth noting about this particular WrestleMania, something that's going on at the time in WWE. Joey Styles was the voice of Raw at the time. Prior to this show, though, they made the call. They, being WWE, decided, hey, let's not have him call WrestleMania. Let's call in the big dogs. Let's get Jim Ross back on commentary. Got to be honest, I said it just a moment ago. I'm an ECW fan. I hate that. There's nothing against Jim Ross. Jim Ross is the voice of so many of our childhoods, but, I've got a soft spot in my heart for Joey Styles, so I would have loved to seen him get that opportunity, that vote of confidence, and to be able to call an entire WrestleMania show instead of just the one match that we got. But let's paint the picture here. It's April 2nd, 2006. I'm a month away from graduating high school. WrestleMania 22 is coming to us from Chicago, Illinois, the Allstate Arena or the Rosemont Horizon, depending on what you know it as. And it's kind of special. It's kind of special because as we sit now, 2023, this is the last WrestleMania to take place in a traditional arena. Now, obviously, WrestleMania, 2020? That one doesn't really count, right? COVID flipped the whole world upside down. So we're going to take that one out of the equation. But every WrestleMania thereafter, WrestleMania 22, has taken place in like a stadium or a dome, bigger arena than just a traditional, what we get here. So that 17,155 announced attendance, it's kind of funny to look back at because I don't think the business was down at this time. WWE was certainly popular in 2006, and they had the star power, I think, to fill a bigger arena. But, yeah, that's what they went with. The theme for this year's WrestleMania is Big Time. And if you aren't familiar with the Peter Gabriel 1986 song by the same name, you're going to be familiar with it by the end of the show. Big Time was, oh my God, they played it so much. And if you watch the build-up to WrestleMania, you're going to hear it on Raw. You're going to hear it on SmackDown and all the promotional videos and commercials. So Peter Gabriel, he was cashing that check in 2006 here, 20 years after he released that song. Now, before we truly dive into this show, I do want to take this time to express some issues that I have with Peacock and the WWE section of Peacock in particular. Now, the WWE Network was not a flawless platform. I had issues with it as well. But Peacock, man, it's just such a mess. First of all, the pre-show for this show, I haven't checked all the WrestleManias, but the pre-show for WrestleMania 22, not on there. So had to hop over to YouTube to find it, which, okay, that's fine, but it's a convenience factor. I would like to watch it all in one sitting if possible. And then also just a general feature that I think that Peacock has needed to have from day one is a calendar feature or a chronological feature, to where if I wanted to watch all WWE programming from January 1st, 2006 through April 2nd, 2006, I wish I could just click something and it would play in chronological order, instead of me having to say, okay, let's watch the Raw from this week. Now let's back out. Let's go over to search SmackDown. Let's find SmackDown from this week. Now let's back out. That's just a pain. All right, that's off my chest. Let's get into it. Like I said, head over to YouTube to watch the pre-show here. You get a pre-show battle royal. 18 men. None of the guys get their own entrance. We got Team Raw and Team SmackDown. They come out in groups. The Raw branded superstars are wearing Raw t-shirts. SmackDown wearing SmackDown t-shirts. I mean, here's the thing about this match. It's a great way to get some action in front of the crowd, to kind of wet their whistle, get them alive before the cameras go live. And you also are rewarding the boys to get them on the card for WrestleMania, right? Like, everyone wants to say, oh, I had a WrestleMania match. And even if it's a battle royal where you're in there for 5 seconds, like it's a cool moment for the boys. So I respect that. We got Michael Cole and Taz on commentary here, and boy, do they let their inner horniness take over for a moment. Melina and Eminem, Johnny Nitro, and Joey Mercury, they're making their entrance here, and they can't help but express how let down they are that we won't get our traditional Melina ring entrance with the splits up on the apron there. And yeah, I just thought that was funny. Then you got Simon Dean, who's they're really trying to push here, but he gets a microphone and a ring full of superstars, and he doesn't get to finish his first sentence before he's super kicked in the mouth, and we're off to the races. So I love that spot. It's a great way to get the crowd into it. You've got an annoying heel trying to get his mic time, and then he gets his comeuppance immediately before the bell even rings, and then he's immediately eliminated. I thought that was good. Now this battle royal, though, it's not good. You've got some very easy eliminations in this one. You can always tell the difference in a battle royal that's meant to just be an appetizer versus one that's a main course, like a Royal Rumble, or one that has some serious implications. And honestly, I hate battle royals like this, because if you watch any of the action that's not the primary focus, like if someone's doing a move in the middle of the ring, but you look at the group of guys that's in the corner or off to the side, you'll see some of the weakest punches and kicks ever thrown. And I've never understood how that doesn't drive a promoter crazy, because it's a bad look for the business. You got to lay them in there. You got to sell it. And instead, it's just a common occurrence that just looks awful. Like they're not hitting each other, and when they are getting hit, they're not flinching at all. It's just they might as well just be standing around watching. I would honestly appreciate that more. It's more honest. Also in this battle royal, we get Goldust hitting a Shattered Dreams on William Regal. It felt like a really random spot. I'm sure it's a completely safe spot that doesn't actually, rack the boys in the balls. But it still was a little just like it was just there. It didn't even get acknowledged by commentary. But you see it. And then, we do get a little standoff between the Raw and SmackDown superstars where they kind of draw the line in the sand and all that, but it's very short-lived and didn't matter at all, because everyone just started fighting each other again. There's no brand loyalty here, and why should there be? It's a battle royal, every man for himself. One of the biggest things that stood out watching this back, though, because I remember it, once I saw it, but it's like, oh, I forgot they did that. So you've got Animal from the Legion of Doom, from the Road Warriors. Obviously, Hawk is no longer with us at this point, but Animal's in this match, and they're just calling him Road Warrior. They're not calling him Animal. They're not calling him Road Warrior Animal. It's just Road Warrior. I thought that was very strange. And another thing, man, that's just weird, and what are you doing in hindsight? Viscera's gimmick. He's wrestling in silk pajamas, and he's like a modern-day sexual chocolate. But they really amped it up more than Mark Henry, I think, ever did. And that's saying something, because Mark Henry had a kid with Mae Young that turned out to be a hand, right? Like that's what they did. And this Viscera gimmick is even more, because he had that one spot, and you know exactly what spot I'm talking about. If you remember this era and this character, then yeah, you know it. His guy's down, face down on the mat, and then he's going to mount him, and he's going to hump his opponents. Oof. I mean, talk about stuff that doesn't translate well to 2023. Taz even called this the Brokeback spot on the show. What a difference in times. Yeah, that wouldn't fly today. The last 4 that we get remaining here, we got Tyson Tomko, there's a name for you, Gene Snitsky, Road Warrior, and Viscera. The crowd is yelling LOD, LOD. They want their hometown legend to win, so naturally he's eliminated. He's not even one of the final 2. That doesn't make sense. Seems like a missed opportunity. Snitsky then eliminates himself when Viscera ducks a big boot. And that's the end of a pretty lackluster and pretty uneventful pre-show. But, I mean, it did get the crowd into it. You got some guys out there that are fan favorites. You got some heels out there, and you got a lot of action going on, people flying everywhere. So it's a decent way to heat up the crowd. But now to the paid attraction, right? We're off to the main card. This is WrestleMania. We get Michelle Williams from Destiny's Child. She comes out and sings America the Beautiful. I think that's a solid choice. She's from Chicago. She looked great. She did a good job singing the song. Then we get our traditional WrestleMania intro video package. This is awesome. Shows clips from Manias throughout the years. Shows a ton of iconic moments. It's a great song, I Dare You by Shinedown to accompany it. Then we get a great montage with some great shots of the city of Chicago, highlights of the build to this card, like how we got here. So I thought that was awesome. Then the stage, we get a good look at the stage and the arena setup for this show. I like it as well. Stage design made it look like buildings of Chicago with, the windows of skyscrapers and what have you. I do also love how they have banners hanging up all around the arena with the faces and names of the superstars on the roster. Really reminds me of early 1990s. Back before the Jumbotron days, you would have, they would just drop down banners at the beginning of each match of the superstars or the wrestlers. It's not WWF. The wrestlers that were in that match. So I appreciated that as well. First match on the card, Carlito and Chris Masters versus Big Show and Kane for the tag titles. I hate this match being first. You need a heater first. This match wasn't it. It had no real build leading into Mania. It was just a match. Yeah, it was a championship match, but it's just a match. The two teams were involved in a few matches in the weeks prior on Raw, but the story was weak. And then, the entrances, Masters looks like $1,000,000. Him and Carlito, despite being heels, they're over with this crowd and the crowds everywhere. I mean, I remember in high school, I liked these guys. So I thought that they had a bright future ahead of them in WWE. Unfortunate they were both short-lived. And then Big Show and Kane, they've got a cool entrance together, and I love how Kane's entrance pyro made it look like the buildings of the stage were on fire. That was awesome. But the match itself kind of sucked. It really just becomes a spot fest later on. And you got Big Show, he picks, does a military press to Masters, who rolls outside the ring. And then he does it to Carlito over the top rope onto Masters. Kane jumps off the top rope onto the two of them, showing his agility. Shane picks Carlito from the ground into the ring, picks him up by his hair. And then Carlito kicks a running Big Show into the corner, and he hits his head on an exposed turnbuckle. But that spot should have been bigger than it was. You got no mention from commentary that the turnbuckle pad was even removed until well after the fact. It made it less significant, in my opinion. Well, that and the fact that it wasn't the best sell from Big Show on the move. Can't really fault him. He's a humongous guy, but he just kind of looked like he was in slow motion and barely hit that exposed turnbuckle. And then Masters and Carlito go for a double suplex to Big Show, but he reversed it and suplexed both the guys. And then this is where the match absolutely loses me, though, because referee Chad Patton, he lets everyone just stay in the ring as long as they want. That's a huge pet peeve of mine. What's the point of the 5-second count rule in a tag match if it's only enforced arbitrarily? Kane goes for a top rope clothesline to Masters, but he catches him in the master lock, and it looks like Kane's going to submit. And I'll tell you in a minute why that's absolutely stupid. Show breaks it up with a big boot, and the crowd boos, so they want the heels to go over here. Now, after some back and forth and chaos in the ring, everyone's still in the ring, and JR says, I think Carlito is legal, but I'm not sure. So that makes that whole master lock spot ridiculous. He wasn't the legal man, so Kane couldn't have submitted, yet the ref was right there looking like, do you give up, do you give up? So, that I just have a problem with that. Masters comes off the top rope and accidentally hits Carlito. Then Kane choke slams Carlito for the win. The crowd was into this match, but I think they missed the mark with it. One, I think you missed a great opportunity to put over the young, hot talent that had the crowd behind them, even as heels. And two, this match didn't have the heat going into the pay-per-view to be on first to me. It ended up just being a spot fest. It also just ended up being a spot fest that just disregarded traditional tag team wrestling rules. Now, Dave Meltzer, who I by no means think is the end-all, be-all authority on match quality, but Meltzer gave it a 1.75 stars, and I've got to agree. I mean, I thought it was a bag match. Now, another reason why I think that they missed the mark by not having Carlito and Masters go over is, number one, the crowd was clearly behind them, like I said, but also what followed this pay-per-view. The very next night on Raw, Big Show and Kane lost the belts to the Spirit Squad, so you're transitioning them out of tag team champion roles anyway, but then you have Chris Masters and Carlito break up the next night. I would have done that differently. So you planted the seeds at the breakup here with the circumstances of the loss, and then you had Masters and Carlito arguing back and forth in the ring after they lost. But, I mean, here's where I would have done it. Put the belt on Carlito and Chris Masters. Let them have a decent little run, even if it's only a few weeks, but then turn them face somewhere over the course of those 3 weeks. Have them feud with the Spirit Squad. Have them drop the titles. Have them split after they drop the titles. You do that at a different time, because putting someone over in a WrestleMania spot like that could have really made them. So next up after this match, though, we get a backstage promo from Shawn Michaels and Coach, and he's talking about his match that he's got coming up tonight with Vince McMahon, and Shawn just sounds like a WWE 2K promo. His cadence and the content of what he's saying, like, it just came off very scripted, kind of corny, kind of funny, kind of cliche. It's just, I didn't care for that little backstage segment there, but that's okay. Next up, though, is a huge match. Huge match. It's Money in the Bank. To me, this should have been on first. This match has natural heat just by the nature of the match and the circumstances. You know, the winner gets the guaranteed title shot. It doesn't need a dramatic story to build it. It doesn't need this week-long program to make it significant. It already has that. And also, you know, Chris Jericho has been on record multiple times. I think he did it on the Inside the Ropes interview, and he did it on, he said it on the Broken Skull sessions with Stone Cold, Steve Austin. The second match is just another match. The desired spot on the WrestleMania card is you either want to go on first or you want to go on last, and if you can't do either of those, then the back half of the card. This match was an absolute banger. Put it on first and get the crowd just eating out of the palm of your hands from the get-go. So you've got Matt Hardy, Shelton Benjamin, Finlay, RVD, who gets a huge pop from the crowd, Bobby Lashley, and Ric Flair. That's the order in which people make their entrances. And JR mentions on commentary how it's only Flair's second ladder match of his career. His first was earlier this year. So I thought that was kind of weird that he mentioned that but didn't let us know that, hey, this is his second ladder match, but he's on a ladder match streak right now. His first one was January 16th, 2006, when he faced Edge for the title on Raw. But honestly, I just can't believe that he's even in this match. Like, I get it. He's a legend. You want to get him on the show, and you want to get his name out there because it's still a huge draw, even here in 2006 as a 57-year-old superstar. But it kind of lost some legitimacy and lost some credibility to me because no one actually thought he was going to win. And also at his age, he doesn't need to be in a ladder match, man. Come on, let the younger guys take the kind of bumps that a ladder match has in store. So this match does have a lot of those painful bumps. RVD does a crossbody over the top rope onto Matt Hardy on the ground while Matt Hardy's holding a ladder. So, yeah, RVD is a psycho. One of the more memorable spots from this entire WrestleMania or any ladder match or certainly any Money in the Bank match in history, though, comes up right here when Shelton Benjamin props a ladder up against the ropes and then runs up it and does a senton onto RVD, Matt Hardy, and Bobby Lashley on the floor. Just an absolutely insane spot there, showing the athleticism and agility of Shelton Benjamin. But then Flair takes his big bump. Matt Hardy superplexes him off the top of the ladder into the ring. He's, writhing in pain. He's helped to the back by the ref and medical staff. But then later in the match, though, he pulls a Willis Reed. He hobbles his ass back out of the locker room, back into the action. And if you're too young to be familiar with Willis Reed, or maybe you're just not a sports fan or basketball fan, look up the Knicks Willis Reed and his injury if you don't get that reference. But then, we do get our patented ladder match spot here where people forget how to climb ladders and they move at a snail's pace. But honestly, it's forgivable. A lot of times in ladder matches, if it's a one-on-one ladder match, that stuff would drive me crazy. But it doesn't take away from this match. There's so much going on, so much action flying everywhere. It's okay. And then Flair, like I said, he made his way back out to the ring, but he takes another big bump as Finlay hits him with the shillelagh, and then he falls off the top of the ladder. I hate seeing Ric Flair take those bumps. Flair's last match that he did in 2022, I didn't watch it, didn't want to watch it, refused to watch it, because come on. I guess I have more respect for Ric Flair's well-being than Ric Flair does, and who am I to say that, I guess? Okay. But RVD ends up winning the match, and, that's absolutely the right call. He was the most over guy in the match, and the crowd went wild. We even got some ECW chants during this match, and so, yeah, they wanted him to go over. They probably would have rioted if he didn't. This match was a ton of fun with a lot of high spots. It went just over 12 minutes. Meltzer gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed it a lot, and it holds up really well. Very solid match that, honestly, like I said, should have gone on first, and I recommend seeking this one out to watch it now. Cut to another backstage interview here. We get Josh Matthews. He's with Mean Gene, but he's interrupted with Randy Orton, who cuts a solid heel promo, hyping up his match against Kurt Angle and Rey Mysterio later for the world title. But he's interrupted by Batista, who tells him it doesn't matter who wins the title because when he returns, it's his. Good stuff there. Batista, very likely would have had a main event spot on this show had he not been hurt. And so good to see them get him in and let the fans know that, hey, he's still very much so in the picture when he returns. But then we go back out to the arena, and we get our Hall of Fame inductees introduction. It kind of feels out of place to me. We've had only 2 matches, and you do it here? Now, I get it. You just presented a banger to the fans, so you want to let them get settled and calm back down so that you can put another match out there and their expectations aren't too high. But I'll get into it later how I would have stacked things on this card. I just think this was a weird time to do it. And then also you had the Fink announcing that Bret Hart was uncomfortable taking part in tonight's festivities. To me, that was such a moment. Because the way he paused after he said, Hall of Famer Bret Hitman Hart, and then he paused. It just sets the crowd up to groan and be disappointed. And then especially don't like that spot after you hear Bruce Pritchard talk about it, because Bruce Pritchard said on his podcast, and he was very much so involved with the WWE at this time, working backstage, Vince's right-hand man. He said that the reason Bret wasn't there and the reason Bret had to leave so quickly at the Hall of Fame ceremony the night before was he had a prior engagement. He didn't have the time to be there. So, I don't know. I think even if that's a lie, I wish Fink would have said that, because to me it kind of is like, hey, we put Bret Hart in the Hall of Fame, but we're still going to shine a negative light on him. Don't like that. But our Hall of Fame class, we got Refrigerator Perry, so Chicago Bears legend. He made it in the Hall of Fame wing. I like that. It's a good choice. You got the Blackjacks, Vern Gagne, Tony Atlas, Sensational Sherry, Mean Gene, Eddie Guerrero, and Bret Hart. That's your class of 06. But again, I think that this should have been put on a little bit later in the card. So now we're back to action, though, and we've got challenger JBL going up against United States champion Chris Benoit. And look, I guess I'll address it here. I'm not going to talk about the circumstances on this show surrounding Chris Benoit's death or anything outside the ring. We know what happened, and it's tragic and disgusting. There's no excuse for it, and that's all I'm going to say about it. On this show, I'm only going to talk about Chris Benoit as he comes up, so as he's relevant to the show that I'm talking about, and it'll only be the in-ring product or what we see. So back to what we see on camera here, though. JBL gets a really cool entrance. The stage lifts up, and you got his limo driving out from underneath it. I think, that's cool. And then Benoit makes his way to the ring, and it's like a 180 from what we see from JBL. He's got all the pageantry, and Benoit just looks like he's ready for business. So the crowd is a little flat here, and that's why I honestly think the Hall of Fame stuff should have been put off a little bit later. Because if you put this match on immediately after the Money in the Bank match, the crowd still got a little bit of a buzz to it, and it helps the match. Now, I get that I just said you want to let the crowd settle in, but you can do that, have your backstage interview segments and everything, and then put this match on. But the crowd is a little flat to begin with. They pick up as we go. We get some patented Benoit chops, and man, they are hellacious. JBL's in the corner taking them, and it's funny if you watch it. JBL was actually cringing before the chops even landed, and look, I get it. His chops were vicious. JBL does have some classic chicken shit heel stuff here as he hides behind Jillian on the outside of the ring. This is just a classic matchup of two absolute brawlers going at it. And they didn't have a lot of build-up going into the match, but to me it didn't really need one. You had JBL saying, he beat Eddie Guerrero for the title, and if he beats Chris Benoit for the title, then he's going to be the greatest technical wrestler of the era. And honestly, that's all the build you need. We don't need a big, long storyline for this one. Now, Michael Cole did say something crazy on commentary in this match. He said that only 5 men in the history of WrestleMania had won a match by submission, and Benoit was one of them. This is WrestleMania 22. That's a crazy stat. Now, it's also wrong. I counted 6, but I did the research so that you don't have to. The others are Tito Santana in the very first ever match at WrestleMania, and then Roddy Piper against Adrian Adonis at WrestleMania 3, Rick Martel versus Coco Beware at WrestleMania 6, Bret Hart got Bob Backlund to submit at WrestleMania 11, then we got Chris Benoit getting Triple H to tap in a triple threat match at WrestleMania 20 that also featured Shawn Michaels. But also, Kurt Angle got Shawn Michaels to submit at WrestleMania 21. So that's the year prior. And now also later in this match, you get another one. That makes it 7, but that's okay. We'll forgive that. That's still an impressive stat, or an unbelievable stat, that only that few in that many WrestleManias. JBL turns up the heat in this one. He'd been mocking Eddie Guerrero and, doing his little shimmy and everything. And Benoit obviously inducted Eddie Guerrero into the Hall of Fame the night prior. So that was some good heel stuff there from JBL. And he goes for the 3 Amigo suplexes. I mean, just classic. And then Benoit does the 3 Amigos to honor Eddie Guerrero. He hits the diving headbutt. And it just never fails to amaze me how, number one, Benoit could hit that thing from crazy distances. I mean, JBL was quite a ways away, all the way across the ring there. But number two, it's just how little he cared about how much it was going to hurt him, how little regard he showed for his own well-being. It's an absolutely insane move that I would never allow if I ran a wrestling promotion. The finish was solid to me. Benoit, he locks in the crossface, but JBL rolls through and he grabs the rope for the win in just under 10 minutes. The ref is positioned to where he can't see that JBL's got the rope. So this finish, I like it because it lets Benoit, yeah, he took the loss, but it makes him look strong. JBL had to cheat to win. And by cheating to win, it gets more heat on JBL. So I thought that was solid. It was a little short for me. I mean, just under 10 minutes. I would have liked to see these two go maybe 2-3 minutes longer. Meltzer gave it 2.75 stars. Not a bad match at all. I enjoyed it. Now, the next match is one of those matches that warrants a holy shit chant from the crowd, or a this is awesome chant from the crowd. Those chants are well played out in 2023, but this one would warrant it. We got Edge, we got Mick Foley. It's a hardcore match, and I think you all know what's coming. Just incredible stuff. The backstory here is that John Cena, he beat Edge for the title. Mick Foley was the guest referee, and Edge blamed Foley for the loss, when all he really did was a very standard and fair 3 count, but didn't matter. Great storytelling here and a very solid build between these two. Joey Styles does get his 1 WrestleMania match here as he comes out and joins commentary. And, man, I really wish he would have been on more than just that match, but that's okay. Edge and Lita are first out, and, man, Lita looked amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. It is funny to me, though, still that they were wearing matching gear. Like they had the same pants on, the same shirt. That's pretty funny. Foley comes out in his traditional flannel and sweatpants as per usual and King, Jerry Lawler, actually had a funny line on commentary. He said that Foley tried to give his clothes to the Red Cross, but they gave them back. That popped me. That was good. This match is an absolute banger, though. I mean, we've got our standard under the ring cookie sheets and road signs. I mean, where else would you put those? You got Edge hitting a spear earlier in the match that when he hit it, he's the one that's rolling around like he's hurt. And then Foley takes off his top flannel shirt and reveals that he had barbed wire wrapped around his torso. I thought that was a genius spot. We get a very brutal looking spot where Foley is hip tossed into the steel steps. I want to take a moment to say that you've got to appreciate Mick Foley, even if hardcore matches aren't your thing, or even if you think that wrestlers should have a certain look. There has never been a person in the history of the business who has given their all for the business and the fans like Mick Foley. I mean, hats off to him. One of the absolute legends and icons of the business. But this match has spot after spot of pure violence. Now, some matches are too much of a spot fest. That ain't this one, though. It worked for me. It's a beautiful train wreck. We've got our patented thumbtack spot where Edge is back suplexed onto the thumbtacks, and you get the close-up camera shot of all the thumbtacks in his back. That was awesome. Mick Foley pulls out Mr. Sacco and wraps it in barbed wire and gives the mandible claw to both Edge and Lita, and their mouths are bleeding. That was cool. But the most memorable spot in this match, and perhaps this whole show, it's an all-timer. So earlier in the match, Edge was covering Foley in lighter fluid, hinting that he was going to light him on fire. But then we fast forward here. Foley's on the apron, and he starts soaking the table that's at ringside in lighter fluid. And then Lita does something that's absolutely funny. I don't think she meant to do it like this, but she's got the barbed wire bat, and she nails Foley in the dick with it. I don't think that's where she was meaning to hit him, but if you watch it, she nailed him right in the lower abdomen, as commentary would normally say. But after she does that, she sets the table on fire, and yeah, I think you know what's coming. Edge is on the inside of the ring. He runs and spears Foley off the apron through the burning table. We get Joey Styles letting out his vintage, "Oh my God!" And Edge gets the pin for the victory. This is one of my favorite Mania matches ever. Both men and Lita leave bloodied. The match goes 14 minutes, 36 seconds. Meltzer gave it a 4-star rating, but to me, that's too low. I know the hardcore stuff, like I said, it's not for everyone, but I think they told a great story. Foley, he got his Mania moment, even in the loss. Fans were chanting his name as he walked up the aisle after the match. This is just great stuff, and it's followed up by one of the worst matches in WrestleMania history, so there's some great irony there. Booker T and Queen Sharmell versus the Boogeyman. Look, they put a lot of time and effort into the build for this match and the storyline, but it just sucked. So before the match gets started, you've got a decent little backstage segment where Sharmell tells Booker that he attracts all the freaks and that she's scared and she's confused as why this is happening. But Booker has a funny line where he says he's no freak magnet. That made me laugh. That was a great line. But then we get this scene where he's walking through the hallway here, and we see Paul Burchill in the hallway doing his pirate gimmick. You got Eugene dribbling a basketball, and Ted DiBiase's doing his vintage $1 Million Man thing where he's telling him he's counting out the dribbles, but then he kicks the basketball away, and Eugene cries. You got Snitsky licking Mae Young's feet. Could have gone without seeing that. But then as he keeps walking, he approaches Goldust, who's dressed in drag. He's wearing a blue dress. And, you know, they are in Chicago, so there's plenty of Oprah references in this show. Goldust actually calls himself Oprah Dust. But he offers to help Booker T and tells him he just needs to let his inner freak out. So this was an okay segment. I mean, it provided some comedy, and everybody that was involved got their catchphrases in. So I have no problem with that segment. But then the match happens. And before we get to the match, we get some crowd shots here. Now, remember, this is WrestleMania. WrestleMania has always been about, bigger than wrestling. This is marrying wrestling with the mainstream. So we get two celebrities, and it's actually the only celebrities that we get crowd shots of, and it's a random two. We get Joe Theismann and then Michelle Williams, who's sang America the Beautiful earlier. So interesting that that's the two that we got on hand, and we got shots of them, but nonetheless, we get them. And then we get to the match. Booker and Sharmell, they're out first. They look absolutely terrified. Booker's pyro goes off and it scares them. Hats off to them. They tried their hardest to, take chicken shit and make chicken salad, as the phrase goes. I mean, they tried their best. They sold everything. They were awesome. Now, looking back, though, I did think once upon a time that the Boogeyman had a cool gimmick. His entrance was awesome. But watching it now, it's like, man, this sucked. This has sucked all the way around. So Booker forces Sharmell to start the match, which is funny because he looks like a coward, but there's strategy to it. But it didn't matter. The crowd wasn't into this match. There was no heat. Booker hit a bookend, his finisher move, no reaction from the crowd. Boogeyman kicked out of the bookend, no reaction from the crowd. I mean, the biggest reaction came when the Boogeyman pulled out the worms, from his pants and put them in his mouth. But even that was just a muted reaction. You get Boogeyman kissing Sharmell with worms in his mouth, and she runs away crying and screaming. And Boogeyman got the win after a two-handed chokeslam to Booker, but the crowd just couldn't care less. Meltzer gave it a -1 star, and to me, that's generous. I think Booker T deserved better than this. Now, I will say also, Boogeyman had a torn, I want to say bicep. It might have been tricep, but I think it was his. Anyway, he had a torn muscle in his arm, so he was very limited in what he can do. It also makes sense why this match was so short, but it just sucked. Booker deserved better. Here's what I would have done with Booker T. I would have put him in the Money in the Bank ladder match instead of Ric Flair. Keep Ric Flair off the card, or let him get backstage segments, something like that, because he is Ric Flair. But I don't need to see a 57-year-old Ric Flair falling off ladders. And then keep Boogeyman off the card, because if he's injured, okay, let him sit this one out, champ. And this is a match that's better suited for velocity or heat anyway, so just give us something better. And if you look at the roster at this time, there's plenty of guys who are on the roster that you could have substituted in for Boogeyman and gave us a better program than this. It stinks to high heavens looking back. But from a bad storyline and match to one that I think was awesome, one of the more compelling storylines of this year, we get Mickie James, rookie Mickie James, and Trish Stratus. So the story coming in, Mickie was a Trish superfan. She was obsessed with her and, kind of hinted that maybe she's more than just a fan. Maybe she's in love with her. Trish had become very standoffish and just needed some space from Mickie, which is understandable when you got someone's crowding you like that. And that caused Mickie to snap and kind of go insane. I thought this was a fantastic story and build to the Mania match. And this match was for the women's title. Now, speaking of things that don't translate well to 2023, we get some absolutely cringe-worthy commentary from JR in this one. As Mickey's making her entrance, he says she might be a little old for Lawler. She's in her early 20s. Oh, do your own independent research into the King and find out why that statement is problematic. And then he said about Mickie James, I've got one word for you, lithium. Yikes. Mental health jokes. I mean, those age like milk left in the sun in today's climate. So could have gone without that one, old JR. And that's later followed up by Lawler, who wants to get in on the fun, saying that, he'd gladly give up celibacy for Trish. How far we've come. But the majority of this match, though, is, Mickie focusing on Trish's injured leg. Earlier in the match, Trish was very aggressive. I mean, she wanted to get her revenge on Mickie, and she was kind of reckless. So she went to deliver a chick kick outside the ring, but Mickie ducked, and Trish hit the ring post. I mean, that's Wrestling 101. You exploit an injury to build drama and tell a story within the match. I thought that was awesome. Now, the crowd here does prove to be a typical, unpredictable WrestleMania crowd, though, because they start booing the babyface, Trish Stratus, and cheering for Mickie. But the ending is controversial, to say the least. Now, there's something that happened in this match that you won't see on the WWE Network. Mickie James makes a gesture with her, we'll just say her hand and her tongue. And they edited that out of the network. Vince McMahon and everyone backstage was very upset with Mickie. You can also watch her comments on YouTube where she speaks about this moment. She thought it was cool in the heat of the moment, but yeah, didn't go over well backstage. But another moment that just was shocking. So Trish grabs Mickie and signals that she's going to go for the Stratus faction. But to break the hold, Mickey grabs Trish by the crotch. Trish lets go, and the look on her face, like she looks violated. Mickey looks just deranged and like without remorse, like, yeah, I liked it. And it's just awful. No shot that would fly in 2022. And it shouldn't have happened in 2006. Now, commentary didn't mention it. And I listened to Bruce Pritchard talk about this match. He didn't mention that happened. But watch it and pay attention to that spot and tell me that's not what happened. This leads to Mickey hitting the Mick kick and getting the win. I mean, it fit with her character and the storyline, but that's just way too far across the line. Meltzer gave the star rating for this one only 2 stars, but honestly, I liked it more than that. It's just one of those things that has a lot of stuff that don't translate well to today, but I like the storyline a lot. I like the match. I thought it was solid. Then, as we go from Mickie James celebrating her WrestleMania victory, we go immediately backstage to a zoomed-in shot of Vince McMahon, and he's flexing his pecs, and he's getting hyped up by his family, and he looks like he just left a serious session at Suntan City and then had a Trebbioloni sandwich on the way, just jacked and tan to the extremes. Now he wants to do a family prayer, and he gets down, and he mocks God, and he mocks Shawn Michaels. I thought that it was a great heel promo and segment. Did a good job of putting their match over. I enjoyed it. We go from that to the streak. It's time for Undertaker. No one's more synonymous with WrestleMania than The Undertaker. This year, he's got a casket match against Mark Henry. Now, this feud started when Mark Henry interfered in Undertaker's title match with Kurt Angle a month prior on SmackDown. That's it. That's all the reason we need. That's all the story we get. That's fine. The next week, Taker challenged Henry to a casket match at Mania. So he wasted no time. He's like, okay, you cost me a title. Let's do it at Mania. And, oh, by the way, it's a casket match. Short, simple, to the point. We get the Druids. They bring the casket out to the ring. And while I've never been the biggest Undertaker fan, I always love his entrance. And anytime the Druids are involved, pops me. That's great. And then speaking of entrances, though, it is weird here not hearing 3-6 Mafia as Mark Henry makes his way to the ring. Mark Henry would debut that song like a month later or so. So it was around this time. But I really wish it was here because Mania has been known to give us live performances of entrance themes, and I just think it would have been really cool to see 3-6 Mafia performing here at WrestleMania with Mark Henry. That would have been awesome. Now, they did perform that song live on SmackDown in May of this year, but still. Now, the match was to be expected, though. I mean, no one ever expected Mark Henry and Undertaker to put on a 5-star clinic of technical wrestling. It had all your familiar spots with Old School, The Last Ride. Well, kind of. It's hard to lift up a guy Mark Henry's size like that, so you got to forgive him. He tried it. We get the diving clothesline over the top rope to the floor, and we get the tombstone pile driver. Mark Henry also hit the World's Strongest Slam earlier on, so you get all your familiar spots. Taker gets the win. He goes to 14-0 on the streak. Pretty formulaic match that went 9.5 minutes. Meltzer gave it a 1.5 stars, and I'd have to say that's about right. You never really felt that Mark Henry was a threat to end the streak, and it kind of had a weak build to the match leading up. And outside of, like I said, the match spots that we get every single Undertaker match, there was no real memorable spots. I mean, I guess the dive over the top rope, he did clear that casket, but still pretty ho-hum in that regard. So how do you follow up The Undertaker extending his streak? With a Vince McMahon match, of course. But that's okay because it does have Mr. WrestleMania Shawn Michaels. It's time for their street fight. The build for this one was another great one of my favorite builds. Vince was on a super run here as a mega heel boss. He had nuclear heat. Every fan hated him. The Kiss My Ass Club was established, and he was on a firing rampage. And Shawn Michaels basically came out and told him, hey, it's time to grow up. You're an executive. Act like one. Something interesting about this feud is the references to the Montreal Screwjob. I mean, we got multiple ones throughout the weeks leading up. And it's interesting to me because this was the year that Bret was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And so it was kind of funny that it's like, hey, Bret, we'll let you in the Hall of Fame this year, but we're going to take jabs at you along the way. After weeks and weeks of attacks and some great angles between the McMahons and Shawn, that included Marty Jannetty, Stephanie drugging Shawn, Shawn having to take a drug test and then throwing piss all over Vince. Shawn facing Shane McMahon and facing the Spirit Squad and much more. Mania was a perfect place for this blow-off. JR delivers an all-time great line on commentary as Vince is making his entrance to the ring. He says, "He's heading to hell, and in my opinion, can't wait to get there so he can take over." That was awesome. Now, this match does have some stiff competition because earlier in the show, Edge and Mick Foley delivered an all-time great hardcore match. So they set the bar pretty high, but Vince and Shawn honestly didn't disappoint. The worst part of the match was the Spirit Squad interfering, though, because you had to relive that stupid gimmick. Vince attempted a sweet chin music in this match, and that was hilarious because he looked like it was the most uncomfortable thing he's ever done. You got Shane McMahon comes out trying to help his daddy, and he brings out some handcuffs, but as Vince is lowering his pants for Shane to make Shawn kiss his ass, Shawn forces Shane to do it instead and then handcuffs Shane to the ropes on the outside of the ring. Just great stuff here. He then beats him with a kendo stick. And then, I gave JR praise for something that he said when Vince was making his entrance, but man, he says something in this one that's, He said, "McMahon's on Queer Street." Not that there's anything wrong with that. Man, what? It's like he called himself like, "Oh yeah, we can't say that anymore. That's not an acceptable thing to say." But the match ends after one of the most memorable spots from this show. Shawn climbs a ladder and then climbs back down because that's not satisfactory. He puts a trash can on Vince's head and then lays him on a table and then climbs an even taller ladder. It was like a 12-foot ladder. Gives Vince some DX crotch chops and then delivers an elbow through Vince and through the table. He picks him up, gives him sweet chin music, and gets the pin. It's 18 minutes and 22 seconds. Majority of it was Shawn Michaels just wearing Vince McMahon out, Vince not even being able to fight back. But it was perfect. Sometimes what you see in a match isn't enough to go off of. Meltzer gave this one 3.5 stars, but to me, when you consider the storyline coming into Mania, how we got here, the humiliation that Shawn Michaels had to go through, and then you see Shawn just let out that pin-up aggression, I thought this match was great. Fantastic. So, main event number 1 is going to follow it. It's Randy Orton. It's Rey Mysterio. It's Kurt Angle. It's a triple threat for the world title. Earlier the year, Rey won the Royal Rumble. They're really building this underdog mentality from Rey Mysterio. Not only is he having to earn his way to get there and earn everything he's got, but it's also emotional because of the passing of Eddie Guerrero. But then, Orton beats Rey Mysterio at No Way Out in February and won his spot in the main event at Mania. But then the following week, Teddy Long's just like, okay, we'll make it a triple threat match, Rey, you're still in. So, I guess. Like, if you're going to make him, quote-unquote, earn it, make him sweat it out a little bit more. Maybe don't put him in the match until the go-home show, the week before, or something like that. But that's okay. All three of these guys were deserving at the time, so it worked. Now, we do get one of those live entrances that I was talking about earlier with POD coming out to perform Rey's Booyaka Booyaka theme. I thought that was awesome. Loved that. Then right before the match starts, Randy Orton with just a great heel move. Charles Robinson's holding the belt up, and Orton just snatches it out of his hand and hit Kurt Angle with it. I thought that was awesome. We get another great spot after that as Angle German suplexes Randy Orton and Rey Mysterio at the same time. Orton was holding on to Mysterio. That was awesome. Now, the crowd does give Rey some boos early on. Now, I mentioned this is one of those typical unpredictable WrestleMania crowds. But, the company clearly wanted Rey to be the guy that the fans were behind here. But Kurt Angle, they were behind him. He's super over. About 5 minutes into the match, Kurt catches Rey going for a 619 and locks him in the ankle lock. Orton's trying to get in the ring with a chair, but Charles Robinson stops him. And while he's dealing with that, Charles Robinson's got his back turned. Rey taps out. Here's the thing about that spot. Yeah, it helps establish Rey as a more of an underdog during the match because, look, he's already tapping out. But it's a triple threat match. There is no rules. The ref shouldn't have left a submission situation just to stop Randy Orton because he had a chair. Little nuances like that just drive me crazy. And then not long after that, Angle locks Orton in the ankle lock, and Orton taps out. but Ray had grabbed the ref and was holding him so that the ref couldn't see it. I like that better. Then Kurt kicks out of an RKO. So, very early on, the champion is looking strong and looks primed to retain the title. I do like and appreciate that. The ending was very abrupt, though. To me, it's like they realized while the match is going on, oh, we got to get out of here. Let's go home. Because Mysterio, counters an angle slam with an arm drag that sends Kurt to the outside of the ring, and then just immediately hit a 619 and West Coast pop and pins Orton for the win. 9 minutes and 18 seconds. The Ultimate Underdog gets the victory, but it was a little too short for me, but that's okay. It's a very emotional moment. It's an emotional win for Ray. It's the night after Eddie Guerrero was inducted into the Hall of Fame. He's greeted by Chavo Guerrero and Vicky Guerrero on the ramp as he's making his exit. I like that. I also love that Angle didn't have to eat the pin, so he came out of it looking strong. Meltzer gave it 3.5 stars. I thought it was a very solid match. Now, behind the scenes, Randy Orton had gotten into a little bit of trouble, and so he was actually suspended after Mania. He got into some trouble about a month before the show or so, and he was suspended after Mania, so he was never really in position for him to win the belt. But if you don't know that, and you just watch the show for what it is, he certainly looked like a threat, and I thought that it was great. Now, after this match, traditional booking would have you, heat the crowd up and then cool them back down and then heat them back up so that the two big matches don't have to go back to back, because sometimes that causes matches not to get the appreciation they deserve because the crowd is all emotionally drained and they need a buffer to recharge. Well, here we go. One of the worst matches of WrestleMania history, right in the middle of our two main events. Now, before we get there, though, we get a backstage look at Cena and at Triple H as they prepare for their WWE title bout. I thought that was cool. It made it really feel like a heavyweight fight, But then we get this stinker. It's Tori Wilson. It's Candice Michelle. It's a Playboy pillow fight match. So they were the best of friends and in a heel stable with Victoria. But then after weeks of jealousy and cheap promotion of Candice Michelle's Playboy cover, here we are. Friends no more. And a joke of a quote-unquote women's match. We get almost 4 minutes of objectifying women, and Tori wins via pinfall, which makes no sense. If victory is achieved by pinfall, then why is there a bed, and why are there pillows in the ring, and why are they in evening gowns? I mean, they didn't stay that way. I mean, of course, they're in evening gowns. We got to rip those off and get them in bra and panties. Whatever. I mean, it's a sad state of the times. For the early 2000s. Women wrestling has come a long way since then. And Meltzer gave it a dud. Agreed. One of the worst in history. But finally, here we are. It's main event time. Triple H, John Cena, WWE title. To get here, there was a Road to WrestleMania tournament on Raw. Triple H won it. He defeated Ric Flair in round 1. His round 2 match against Big Show was a double countout. So the finals had Triple H, Big Show, and RVD in a triple threat match. Triple H won on February 20th. So we got a solid 5-6 week build of Triple H and John Cena. Then when we get here, this is what WrestleMania entrances are all about. If there's one man who's known for his Mania entrances, it's Triple H. So we got a throne that rises up through the floor at the top of the entrance ramp, and he's wearing this custom crown and get up like Conan the Barbarian. It's got his patented medieval cross logo as his new entrance theme. Bow Down to the King plays. And then it goes to his traditional entrance theme and he makes his way to the ring. But he looks like $1 million. Awesome entrance. But not to be outdone, Cena has a custom entrance of his own, and it's awesome. It's mob themed, which is perfect for Chicago. We get, Al Capone up on the screen and some Chicago Prohibition era gangsters. You get the ramp raises up, and out from underneath it, an old-timey car drives out. The car is flanked with guys dressed as 1930s gangsters, and, oh, hey, one of them CM Punk. So that's pretty cool. Getting to be an extra in WrestleMania in his hometown. That was awesome. Cena comes out, and he's wearing a fedora and a trench coat, and he's tucking a Tommy gun. Shoots, quote-unquote, shoots the Tommy gun. We get some pyro. I thought that was awesome. Incredible entrance. Now, the crowd for this match is electric from start to finish. Even though he's the face, we get some FU Cena chants. Gotta love that energy. Crowd energy can take an okay match and turn it into a great one. This match has a slow start. They're filling each other out, and a lot of times that can kill it if it's not the right crowd. But it didn't, and the match picked up in a hurry. There is a spot in this match that I absolutely hate. So the match goes to the outside, and Triple H grabs Cena and leads him from the side of the ring up to the ring ramp and puts him in position for like a power bomb or a pedigree with Cena's head between his legs. But Cena, reverses it and backdrops him onto the steel. It makes a great sound, and it makes it more dramatic and meaningful because, like, oh, on that steel, that's got to hurt. So I get why they wanted to get over there, but just the way they got there, I hated it. Because it's not like they just happened to end up there. It's not like they fought their way over to the entrance ramp. He literally grabbed him, they walked over there together, and then they immediately did that spot without any kind of, struggle. So didn't like that, but again, it's the little nuances that they just go a long way for me personally. So you look around the arena, almost everyone in the crowd staying on their feet the entire match. That's awesome. That's a sign of two guys doing their job in the ring. It's a very solid main event. Good back and forth. Both guys hit their signature moves, got all their stuff in, including a Triple H sledgehammer spot. Now, there is also a hilarious ref spot in this one. Mike Chioda gets backed into the corner, and Triple H is behind Cena, who's got Chioda pinned in the corner, and Triple H gives Cena a low blow, but since he was piled against Chioda, the ref got an uppercut to the boys as well. So that made me laugh. And shout out to Mike Chioda for taking that one like a champ. Then, like I said earlier, there is another submission later in the show after they talked about Benoit. Cena becoming the 7th guy to win a WrestleMania match by submission. He gets Triple H to tap out to the STF. Triple H fought it. You thought he was going to get out of it and escape, but he ended up tapping out. I love this match. Meltzer gave it a 3.75. I think that's low. I thought this match was fantastic. So overall, WrestleMania 22, I thought it was a very solid show. It's not without its flaws, though. Match placement on the card was a mess. You got a couple of matches that should have just been left off all together. But it was very good overall. One of the better WrestleManias if you take a step back and look at the grand scope of things. Now, I keep talking about this match placement and the order of the card. Here's how I would have booked it. I think it would have flowed a lot better. I think your crowd engagement would have been better. So I would have went Money in the Bank match first. Heat the crowd up right away. Give them a banger. Then go that tag titles match. Still a okay match, but it cools them down some. Then I'd go ahead and get your Playboy pillow fight out of the way. It's on the card. You wait until the main events, are underway, and the crowd's not wanting to see that. They're ready for what they came to, what they paid for. So get this one out of the way early in the show. Then I'd go Edge and Foley because, okay, you had to suffer through that Playboy pillow fight. Here's a banger, Edge and Foley. Then I'd go with the Hall of Fame ceremony, cool them down. Then I'd go with Booker T and Boogeyman just to get it out of the way, but I'd follow it up with JBL and Benoit. So you got a bad match and then a good match. Then I'd go with Taker versus Mark Henry, Shawn versus Vince, your world title match, the triple threat. Then I would put your women title match, the Mickie James Trish Stratus, I would put it here. Because, yeah, it's a cool down from your two men's title matches, but it's still a quality match that doesn't completely bore the fans. Then I'd go with Cena and Triple H on last. They did get that right. So as for the show, I'm going to do this every show. I'm going to give out some superlatives. So first up, we've got the RVD 5-star moment of the night. To me, it's Edge spearing Mick Foley through the burning table. That's a spot that's just going to live on forever, especially in my mind. When I think of this show, that's the spot I think of. And then the Shockmaster shockingly bad moment of the night. You got plenty to choose from here. Between a 57-year-old Ric Flair taking bumps off a ladder, to the Boogeyman versus Booker T, to JR and King's cringeworthy commentary, to that awful way in which Mickie James got Trish to release the Stratusfaction. But, I'm going to go with the Playboy pillow fight because it was a god-awful match. It sucks that Tori Wilson and Candice Michelle had to have their WrestleMania moment reduced to that, to where they're just, out there to look at and nothing more, because that's all it was. So, to me, that's the Shockmaster shockingly bad moment of the night. And with that, WrestleMania 22 is down for the 3 count. Thank you all for joining me on this ride. I'm going to put out Twitter polls to determine which show I'll be covering going forward, so be on the lookout for that. And I appreciate you all. Catch you next time on The Lore of the Ring.